Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Imagine pulling a letter out of your mailbox on a normal, rainy Tuesday. You're distracted, you tear it open, and you start reading. But halfway through, you freeze. It's not your mail. It belongs to the incredibly polite, quiet old man living right across the hall. And the last sentence reads, "The money is hidden where we buried the past." What would you do? Would you pretend nothing happened, or would you start digging? Welcome back to the channel, where we solve real-life problems and master English at the same time. Today, we're following a gripping 10-chapter mystery called The Wrongly Delivered Letter. As the secrets unfold, you're going to naturally pick up crucial phrasal verbs, idioms for decision-making, and advanced vocab that native speakers use when the stakes are high. Grab a notebook, listen closely to the clues, and let's see if you can figure out the mystery before our protagonist does. Let's dive right into Chapter 1, The Misplaced Envelope. It was a miserable gray Tuesday, and the rain was pouring down in sheets. Maya rushed into the lobby of her apartment building, shivering from the cold wind. Her arms were loaded with groceries, a dripping umbrella, and a small stack of mail she had just pulled from her box. Once inside her warm apartment, she kicked off her wet shoes and dumped everything onto the kitchen counter. Eager to relax, she began to sort through the envelopes while waiting for her kettle to boil. She picked up a sleek, heavy envelope with beautiful handwritten cursive. Without looking closely at the name, she tore it open. Maya took a sip of her tea and started reading. But by the second sentence, her hand froze. The words on the page didn't make any sense. "The pressure is turning up, and our time is running out. The money is hidden where we buried the past. Don't look for me." Heart pounding, Maya flipped the envelope over. Her eyes widened. It wasn't addressed to her at all. The bold letters read, "Mr. Harrison, apartment 4B. Mr. Harrison was her next-door neighbor. He was a quiet, gentle man in his late 60s who always helped her carry her groceries and smiled warmly in the hallway. He seemed completely harmless. Maya stared at the open letter, her mind racing. A shocking secret was staring her right in the face. How well did she actually know the man next door? She had just opened a door into a dark past, and she couldn't close it. The next morning, Maya could barely look at her front door without feeling a knot in her stomach. She had barely slept, her mind constantly replaying the cryptic words from the letter. Stepping out into the hallway to head to work, she prayed she wouldn't run into anyone. Of course, fate had other plans. The elevator doors opened, and there stood Mr. Harrison, holding a small watering can. He looked up and gave her his usual warm, grandfatherly smile. "Good morning, Maya," he said, his voice gentle and calm. "Stay dry out there today." Maya forced a smile, trying her absolute best to put on a brave face. "Good morning, Mr. Harrison," she stammered, her voice tighter than usual. As he reached out to press the lobby button for her, his sleeve slid back slightly. For the first time, Maya noticed a thick, jagged scar running across his wrist. It looked decades old, deep and rough, completely contrasting with his soft demeanor. She stared at it for a second too long before quickly looking away. "Are you feeling all right?" Mr. Harrison asked, his eyes crinkling with genuine concern. "Yes, just tired," she lied, her heart starting to hammer against her ribs. She looked at this kind man who always fed the stray birds and held the door open. Could a man like this really be hiding a dark, dangerous past? The elevator dinged, and Maya rushed out into the rain, completely shook up.
She realized then that you truly can never judge a book by its cover. Back in her apartment that evening, Maya paced across the living room floor, the letter heavy in her coat pocket. She was facing a massive moral dilemma that was tearing her apart. Should she just tape the envelope back up and slide it under his door and pretend she never saw it? That would be the easiest way to protect her own peace of mind, but her conscience wouldn't let her turn a blind eye to something that felt so dangerous. Frustrated and confused, she called her closest friend Sarah to talk through her options. "Maya, you need to drop this right now," Sarah warned over the speakerphone, her voice sharp with worry. "You opening someone else's mail is a major breach of privacy, and you don't know what you're stepping into." Maya knew her friend was entirely right, but the burning curiosity was simply too strong to ignore. Taking a deep breath, she decided she would return the letter and apologize for the honest mistake. She walked out into the dimly lit hallway and tiptoed over to apartment 4B. Just as she raised her hand to knock, she froze midair. Through the thin wood of the door, she heard the muffled sound of a heated, whispered argument. "I told you never to contact me here," Mr. Harrison's voice hissed, completely stripping away his usual gentle tone. "The deal is done, and I'm not running anymore." Maya held her breath, her hand trembling as she realized she was already in too deep. Maya scrambled back to her own apartment, locking the deadbolt silently behind her. Her heart was pounding so loudly she was certain Mr. Harrison could hear it through the walls. The gentle old man from the hallway was gone, replaced by a ghost with a dangerous secret. She realized she couldn't just sit in the dark anymore. She needed to dig up the truth. Sitting at her desk, she opened her laptop and began searching local news archives from decades ago. She started by typing in his name, searching for any crimes or disappearances linked to a Harrison. Hours blurred together as she scrolled through hundreds of old articles, but nothing seemed to fit. Frustrated, she stared at the glowing screen, remembering the deep, jagged scar on his wrist. On a whim, she changed her search keywords to focus on historical local crimes involving a physical description instead. Suddenly, a headline from 15 years ago flashed onto the screen: "The Millennium Art Heist." 3 men had stolen millions in rare paintings, but the mastermind had vanished into thin air before the trial. The article included a grainy old police sketch of the fugitive, noting a distinct scar on his left wrist. Maya gasped, covering her mouth with both hands as she stared at the digital sketch. The eyes in the drawing were identical to the kind, crinkling eyes of her next-door neighbor. Mr. Harrison was a completely fake identity, an alias used to hide from the law. She wasn't just living next to a quiet retiree, she was living next to a high-profile fugitive. The next afternoon, Maya kept her front door cracked open just an inch, peering through the small gap. She couldn't tear her eyes away from apartment 4B, waiting for something or someone to appear. Her patience ran out around 4 o'clock when the heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. A tall, rough-looking man wearing a dark leather jacket walked directly to Mr. Harrison's door. He didn't knock politely. Instead, he pounded his fist heavily against the wood. The door opened quickly, and the stranger stepped inside, slamming it shut behind him. Immediately, Maya pressed her ear against her own door, trying desperately to eavesdrop on the conversation. Though the walls were thick, the stranger's angry voice cut right through the quiet hallway. "You think you can just disappear with the final share?" the man roared, his tone dripping with malice.
We have a fast-approaching deadline, and I am not leaving this city empty-handed again." Maya caught fragments of Mr. Harrison's lower, calmer voice, trying to de-escalate the terrifying situation. A few minutes later, the door swung open violently, and the stranger stormed out into the corridor. As he angrily shoved his hands into his pockets, a small black leather notebook slipped out and hit the carpet. The man didn't even notice as he rushed toward the stairwell, muttering curses under his breath. Maya waited until the sound of his footsteps completely faded before slipping out into the hall. With a racing heart, she snatched the notebook from the floor and ducked back into her apartment. Safe inside her kitchen, Maya sat at the table and carefully opened the stranger's black notebook. Her hands shook slightly as she turned the pages, which were filled with messy handwriting. Instead of names, the pages were crowded with cryptic addresses, dates, and random numbers. As she studied the notes, she realized this wasn't just a record of an old, forgotten crime. The most recent date in the notebook was circled in red ink, and the deadline was tomorrow night. She felt a sudden wave of intense fear, realizing an active and dangerous plot was unfolding right next door. Needing a change of scenery to clear her head, she packed her things and walked down to the local coffee shop. She ordered a tea and sat by the window, spreading the notes out to piece together the clues. The addresses matched a series of old abandoned warehouses located near the city's shipping docks. She focused so deeply on the paper that she completely lost track of the busy world around her. A sudden shadow fell across her table, blocking out the warm afternoon sunlight. Maya leapt up from the notebook, her breath catching instantly in her dry throat. Standing right across from her was Mr. Harrison, holding a mug of black coffee. He wasn't smiling his usual grandfatherly smile. Instead, his face was completely serious. Without asking for permission, he pulled out the wooden chair and sat directly across from her. His sharp, intelligent eyes dropped down to the stolen notebook and then looked straight into hers. The silence between them at the small coffee shop table was thick and palpable. Maya wanted to stand up and run, but her legs felt like lead beneath her. Mr. Harrison reached out and gently closed the open notebook with his scarred wrist. "I think it's time we finally come clean with each other, Maya," he said softly. His voice wasn't angry or threatening. It just sounded incredibly tired and defeated. "I know you opened that wrongly delivered letter, and I know you found the notebook." Maya swallowed hard, trying to find her courage as she looked into his eyes. "You're the mastermind from the Millennium Art Heist?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Mr. Harrison sighed, looking down at his coffee mug before shaking his head. "That is what the old police sketches say, but they only know half the story," he replied. "I wasn't the thief who organized the heist. I was the museum insider who tried to stop it." He explained that when he discovered his partners were going to destroy the art, he hid it. "I became a whistleblower, but the dangerous man involved framed me to protect themselves." He had spent 15 years living under an alias, protecting the paintings until it was safe. "The man you saw yesterday was my former partner, and he found me because of that letter." He looked at Maya with genuine desperation, his gentle eyes pleading for her trust. "He thinks I have the paintings to sell, but I want to return them to the museum." Maya sat back in her chair, realizing her quiet neighbor was running out of time and options. Maya stared at Mr. Harrison, her mind spinning as she processed his incredible confession. She was standing at a crossroads, forced to make a choice that could change both of their lives. She could call the police immediately, or she could form an alliance to help this old man clear his name. Looking at his tired, honest face, she chose to trust her instincts and help him. "If your partner has the letter and the notebook, he holds all the leverage," Maya pointed out. "We need a solid backup plan to outsmart him before the deadline tomorrow night." Together, they spent hours in the quiet corner of the cafe, mapping out a strategy. Maya used her knowledge of the neighborhood to suggest a busy public square for the meeting. The plan was to trick the partner into thinking he was getting the paintings, while they secretly alerted the museum's recovery team. Mr. Harrison smiled, a genuine look of relief washing over his face for the first time in days. However, their brief moment of hope vanished when Mr. Harrison's phone buzzed aggressively on the table. It was a text message from an unknown number containing a photo of Maya's apartment door. "I changed the rules," the text read, chilling Maya to the very bone. "Midnight tomorrow at the old warehouse by the docks. Come alone, or the girl pays the price." Maya looked at Mr. Harrison, realizing the partner had caught wind of their connection. The safe public meeting was off the table, and they were walking straight into a trap.
The old warehouse district by the docks was completely dark, smelling of salt water and rusted iron. A thick fog rolled in from the harbor, swallowing the yellow glow of the distant streetlights. Maya's hands shook inside her jacket pockets as she walked alongside Mr. Harrison toward the entrance. This was the climax of the entire nightmare, a nail-biting moment where one wrong move meant disaster. They stepped inside the massive, hollow building, their footsteps echoing loudly against the concrete floor. Waiting in the center of the room under a single hanging light bulb was the rough-looking partner. "You're late, Harrison," the man hissed, stepping out from the shadows with a malicious grin. He looked at Maya, his eyes narrowing. "And I see you brought your little helper along." Mr. Harrison stepped in front of Maya, his voice steady despite the intense, nerve-wracking pressure. "Leave her out of this," Mr. Harrison demanded, holding up a heavy locked aluminum briefcase. "The paintings are safe inside here, but you don't get the code until she walks out that door." The partner laughed, a cold sound that echoed through the empty warehouse as he reached into his jacket. "You don't make the rules anymore, old man," the partner said, stepping forward to grab the briefcase. Suddenly, the high-stakes negotiation was cut short by the bright, blinding flash of searchlights. Dozens of heavy footsteps shattered the silence as armed police officers flooded the warehouse from every exit. "Drop your weapons and put your hands in the air," a loud voice boomed through a megaphone. The partner froze in utter shock, realizing too late that his perfect trap had been completely turned against him. Maya exhaled a breath she felt like she had been holding for days, looking back toward the entrance. She had secretly coordinated with a detective hours before the meeting, ensuring they had backup waiting in the shadows.
The bright flashing lights of the police cars painted the wet warehouse walls in brilliant shades of red and blue. Maya stood wrapped in a warm blanket, watching the officers lead the shouting partner away in heavy handcuffs. The chaotic dust finally settled around them, replaced by a deep, overwhelming sense of relief. A lead detective walked over to Mr. Harrison, handing him a document with an official stamp. Because of the evidence inside the briefcase and Maya's detailed testimony, his name was finally cleared. He was no longer a high-profile fugitive running from a dark past. He was a free man. However, for his own safety and protection, the museum's security team advised him to relocate to a new city. A week later, Maya stood in the quiet hallway of her building, looking at the open door of apartment 4B. The movers had finished packing, leaving the apartment completely empty and still. She felt a bittersweet twinge in her heart, realizing how much her perspective on life had changed in just a few days. An accidental mistake with a misplaced envelope had thrown her into a dangerous, life-changing adventure. A month passed, and Maya walked into the lobby on a sunny afternoon to check her mail. Among her usual bills, she found a bright, colorful postcard showing a beautiful, sun-drenched coastal town. She flipped the postcard over and smiled warmly as she read the short, handwritten message. "The air is fresh, the ocean is calm, and I am finally living in the light. Thank you, neighbor."
And just like that, a simple mistake with a wrongly delivered letter completely changed two lives forever. I love how Maya chose to trust her instincts and help her neighbor clear his name. But let me ask you, if you were in Maya's shoes back in Chapter 3, what would you have done? Would you have slipped the letter under the door, or would you have investigated? Let me know in the comments below. We covered some incredible English in this story, from idioms like judge a book by its cover to high-stakes vocabulary like whistleblower and alias. If you want to master these terms, I've broken them all down for you in the description box below. If you loved solving this mystery with me, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next real-life dilemma. If you're ready to keep practicing your listening skills and expand your vocabulary right now, click right here to dive into our next story. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I will see you in the next story. Goodbye.